They told him to use the service entrance because he didn't look like a guest. What they didn't know was that he owned the building, and he was there to see who truly belonged. The marble in the lobby gleamed like a showroom floor, lit by soft chandeliers that bathed everything in golden light. The air carried a hint of lavender and leather, expensive, intentional. Staff buzzed behind the front desk in pressed uniforms, rehearsed smiles ready for their next VIP. But when the man in the grey hoodie and worn boots stepped through the revolving doors, no one moved. No welcome, no eye contact, not even a nod. He paused just inside the entrance, taking in the space he had designed 5 years ago. From the handcrafted crown moulding to the cascading floral centerpiece by the elevators, every inch had his signature. He'd spent months choosing the carpet pattern, weeks tasting the menu, years building this place from the ground up. And now he stood there like a ghost. No one recognized him, that was the point. He wore no name tag, no tailored suit, just denim jeans, a hoodie zipped halfway, and quiet eyes that scanned every detail. Not judging, just watching, seeing how the staff operated when they thought the boss wasn't around. This wasn't his first unannounced visit, but it might be his most important one. To the staff, he looked like someone asking for directions, maybe waiting for a ride share. Just another man passing through. A bellhop passed by with a luggage cart stacked high. No eye contact. A security guard near the entrance shifted slightly, eyeing him for a moment too long before looking away. He wasn't a threat, but he wasn't a priority either. He stepped further into the lobby, past the velvet ropes and polished concierge stand, and stopped near the sitting area. A couple in designer outfits sipped cocktails, while a front desk agent offered them a warm smile and a chilled towel. Another guest in a business suit strolled by, and the concierge stood straighter, adjusting his tie before greeting him with a "Welcome back, sir." No one said anything to the man in the hoodie. He moved slowly, hands in his pockets, listening more than looking. He could hear how staff spoke to guests who looked the part, how their voices shifted, how their posture changed. Charm turned on like a light switch, and when someone like him walked by, that switch stayed off. He found a quiet corner near the elevators and leaned against a column, pretending to check his phone. In truth, he was timing them, seeing how long it would take for someone to acknowledge him. 1 minute, 2, 5, nothing. It wasn't disappointment he felt. Not yet. It was observation, data, proof. But it was hard not to notice the contrast, how quickly others were greeted, helped, pampered, and how invisible he had become the moment he walked in without a Rolex or a reservation. He shifted his stance, glancing toward the front desk. Still nothing. So he waited. Because sometimes the most powerful man in the room is the one no one notices until it's far too late. The second time the security guard looked his way, it wasn't casual, it was a decision. He stepped forward, cutting across the lobby with calculated steps, his radio clipped to his shoulder, buzzing faint static. The man in the hoodie didn't move, didn't need to. He knew exactly how this would go. He'd seen it before. Too many times. "Excuse me, sir," the guard said, firm but polite, already slipping into the tone used for potential problems. "Can I help you with something?" The man looked up slowly. His voice was calm, almost disarming. "Just waiting on someone?" The guard nodded, but it wasn't agreement, it was hesitation. He looked him over again, eyes landing on the hoodie, the boots, the faint scuff on the knee of his jeans. "Do you have a reservation here?" "No." "Are you a guest?" He let the question hang in the air for a moment, then answered without flinching. "Something like that." The guard's radio crackled again. He adjusted the volume, then gestured subtly toward the side hallway. "We have a side lounge by the staff entrance if you're just waiting. Might be more comfortable there." It wasn't about comfort. It was about moving him out of sight. He didn't respond, just smiled faintly and turned toward the front desk instead. The receptionist spotted him approaching and immediately straightened, her polite smile flickering into something less certain. She looked past him, expecting someone else, then realized he was alone. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice clipped and cautious. He offered a small nod. "Possibly. Just looking to speak with someone about the hotel." She blinked. "Are you a vendor?" "No." "Delivery?" "No." She paused, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "Sir, this area is reserved for guests. If you're not staying with us, I'll have to ask you to wait out back." He tilted his head slightly. "Out back?" "Yes," she said more firmly now. "We have a service lounge for visitors and contractors near the rear entrance. This is a premium property, and we try to keep the lobby clear for actual guests." There it was. Not subtle, not even veiled. He smiled, but there was no humor in it, just confirmation. His eyes moved over her carefully curated appearance, perfectly applied makeup, tight bun, gold nameplate. Her professionalism was polished, but her assumptions were plain. "I see," he said quietly, and he did. He saw everything, the way she looked through him, the way the security guard lingered nearby waiting for a nod to escort him out, the way no one, absolutely no one, had asked what he did, why he was really here, or even who he might be. He turned away without another word, not because he was defeated, but because he wasn't done watching. There were still pieces to move, still truths to uncover. He walked past the reception desk again, back toward the same column near the elevators. And this time, he didn't hide his smile. Because the moment they told him he didn't belong was the moment they proved exactly why he did. A soft creak echoed as the service door near the end of the corridor swung open, followed by the subtle squeak of a mop bucket wheel. The janitor moved slowly, with a kind of quiet rhythm only years of repetition could teach. His uniform was faded at the shoulders, the name tag a little crooked, but his posture spoke of pride. Not in appearance, but in presence. He worked like the building belonged to him. The man in the hoodie watched from his usual corner, leaned casually against the marble column, still invisible to most, but not to the janitor. The older man looked up mid-mop, eyes scanning the room before settling on him. He didn't flinch, didn't ignore, didn't hesitate. "Evening," he said, offering a nod and a warm, worn smile. The man in the hoodie returned the nod. "Evening." "You waiting for someone?" the janitor asked, voice gentle, no suspicion, just human curiosity. "Sort of," the man replied. The janitor gave a small chuckle. "Ain't that always the way?" He paused, letting the mop rest against the edge of the bucket. Then, without being asked, he shuffled over to the nearby refreshment station and poured a glass of water. Not for himself, for the man who'd been standing alone all night. He handed it over without ceremony. "Lobby gets dry sometimes. You'd be surprised how many folks stand here with nothing in their hands but time." The man accepted it. "Thanks. Don't mention it." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the clink of ice in the glass filling the space between them. "You work nights often?" the man asked. The janitor nodded. "These days, yeah. Been here about 12 years now. Never cared much for the day crowd. Too loud. Nights are quiet. Honest. You see what this place really is after the lights dim?" The man looked around the lobby, now emptied of most of the bustle. "And what is it?" The janitor glanced at the polished surfaces, the velvet chairs, the pristine front desk. Then he smiled again. "A whole lot of shine. Not always a lot of heart." The man looked at him more closely now. There was no bitterness in his voice, no complaint, just truth, spoken by someone who'd been around long enough to see behind the curtain. "You like working here?" the man asked. The janitor shrugged. "I like keeping things clean. Not just floors. Sometimes Feels like I'm the only one trying to. The words hit harder than they were meant to, because at that moment, the man in the hoodie realized something. This janitor, overlooked and underpaid, was the only person in this entire building who had treated him like a human being. No judgment, no assumptions, just basic, quiet dignity. And in a place obsessed with appearances, that meant everything. The man raised the glass in a silent toast. The janitor nodded back. Sometimes the highest character comes from the humblest role. The man took a sip of the water, cool and clean, a small kindness in a place that had offered him none until now. The janitor leaned back on his mop handle, not in a rush to return to the polished floors. There was something in his eyes, curiosity maybe, or just the quiet recognition of another man used to being overlooked. "You from around here?" the janitor asked casually, as if they were old friends catching up at a diner. "Not exactly," the man replied, his tone neutral. "But I know the area." The janitor nodded slowly. "Good spot. Used to be better, though, before the new management came in." There it was. The man tilted his head slightly. "What changed?" The janitor gave a low chuckle, not bitter, resigned. "Same building, same marble floors, but now it's all about the image. Suits walk around like they're auditioning for magazine covers. Staff get trained to smile, not to care. You want to know what the orientation is like now?" The man raised an eyebrow. "Tell me." "They spend 2 hours on how to greet VIP guests and about 2 minutes on how to treat the people who clean up after them." The man said nothing, just listened. That was enough. "I used to take pride in this place," the janitor continued, glancing around the lobby. "Back when the old GM ran it, everyone mattered. We had a dishwasher once who couldn't read English real well. Instead of firing him, they taught him. That guy's running his own kitchen now." He smiled, remembering. "Now?" he sighed. "Now, if you don't fit the look, your background noise, even to your own team." The man felt that. "You ever speak up about it?" he asked. The janitor gave him a long look. "To who? The new manager? The one who walks past me every night like I'm a lamp? Nah, I just do my job. Keep my head down. Try to keep some pride in it." The man's jaw tightened, just for a moment, not in anger, frustration. "They ever thank you?" he asked. The janitor shook his head. "Nah, they think thanks is for people who wear ties." The lobby was quiet again, save for the occasional ding of the elevator and the low hum of distant voices from the bar. The man leaned against the marble pillar, eyes thoughtful. "Funny," he said. "Sometimes the most important people in a building aren't the ones with the titles." The janitor smiled again. "Ain't that the truth?" And in that moment, 2 men who had walked very different roads stood on the same level. No roles, no ranks, just 2 human beings having a conversation everyone else in the building was too proud or too blind to have. The man finished his water, setting the glass down gently. "Appreciate the talk," he said. The janitor nodded. "Any time." As the janitor returned to his mop, the man turned back toward the lobby, something new in his eyes. He had seen enough. And what came next would change everything. Laughter echoed from the far end of the lobby, polished, performative, and just loud enough to catch attention. The hotel manager, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit with a crimson pocket square, was mid-tour with a tall man in designer glasses. The investor. You could spot him by the way he didn't look around, only nodded while the manager pointed and bragged. "And here," the manager said with a sweeping gesture toward the lounge, "is where we provide complimentary cocktails for our VIP guests. No well liquors, mind you, we only serve top-shelf brands to our elite clientele." The investor grunted in approval, clearly enjoying the presentation, if not the substance. The manager continued like he was auditioning for a commercial. "We pride ourselves on experience, discretion, excellence. This hotel has been rated in the top 1% for service in the region, and we intend to keep it that way." As he spoke, Two front desk agents stood behind the counter, whispering and giggling about a guest who had asked for directions earlier, the same man in the hoodie they had dismissed not even 30 minutes ago. Probably thought he could afford a room, one of them muttered, tapping her freshly manicured nails against the desk. "Did you see those shoes?" The other smirked. Maybe he was lost. The manager didn't hear it. Or worse, he did, and didn't care. He turned toward the atrium windows with a smile polished to perfection. "We attract a very specific type of guest. People who appreciate refinement, who want privacy. You won't see the wrong crowd here. That's part of what keeps our standards high." Across the room, the man in the hoodie watched it all unfold. He'd been standing in plain sight for nearly an hour now, still unacknowledged, still invisible. And yet, here was the manager talking about excellence, about service, about standards, as if those words meant anything without action. The investor stopped to admire a custom art piece on the wall. "How often do you have troublemakers?" he asked. The manager chuckled, low and smug. "Not often. We're very proactive about identifying outliers." Outliers? You know, people who don't quite fit the environment. We're selective about who we welcome. It helps preserve the brand. That word, brand, landed like a slap. Because in his version of hospitality, the brand had always meant something different. It meant people. It meant respect. It meant treating the janitor like the CEO when no one was watching. But somewhere along the line, this manager had twisted it into a shield, one used to filter, exclude and judge. As they passed the front desk, the manager offered a wink to one of the receptionists, who laughed too loudly in return. The performance never stopped. It wasn't about service, it was about status. The man in the hoodie exhaled slowly, watching as the tour disappeared around the corner. The contrast between words and actions was now too sharp to ignore, and soon the man giving the tour would find himself on one of a very different kind. The man in the hoodie stayed near the marble column, blending into the corner like part of the architecture. By now he'd lost count of how many staff had walked past him without a glance, not one greeting, not one question, just subtle sneers, sideways looks, and the constant hum of judgment. A new couple walked in, mid-30s, stylish, tired from travel. The woman wheeled a silver suitcase behind her while her partner checked his phone. They didn't carry luxury brands, no flashy watches, just worn backpacks and road dust. They approached the front desk, and the same receptionist who had told the man to wait out back glanced up, her smile forced and thin. "Checking in?" she asked flatly. The woman nodded, polite. "Yes. We have a reservation. Name's Hernandez." The receptionist's eyes darted toward the couple's clothes, then back to her screen. Her fingers tapped, slowly, deliberately. "I don't see anything under that name," she said, tone cold. The man leaned in. "It should be there. I booked online last week." The receptionist sighed. "Do you have a confirmation number?" He pulled out his phone, thumbs moving as he searched. Behind the desk, one of the other agents leaned in to whisper, just loud enough for the man in the hoodie to hear. "Must have used points or something. They don't look like they can afford this place." The receptionist didn't shush her. She smirked. That was it, that smirk. The moment it happened, everything snapped into place for him. It wasn't just bad service, it wasn't oversight. It was intentional. The receptionist wasn't overwhelmed. She was choosing who deserved her attention. And just like they had done to him, they were making this couple feel like outsiders in a place meant for everyone. He watched as the couple fumbled to find their email. Their smiles faded, their shoulders tensed. Hospitality had turned into humiliation. Still leaning by the column, the man clenched his jaw. His patience wasn't thin, it was measured. But now, the meter had run out. He stepped away from the wall and walked slowly toward the front desk. The same receptionist who had dismissed him earlier noticed his approach and gave a dramatic sigh. "Sir, like I said earlier, if you're waiting for someone, we ask that you—" But he didn't stop at her desk. He walked past it, straight toward the couple. "Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez?" he asked gently. They turned, surprised. "Yes," the woman answered cautiously. "Your reservation's fine," he said with a calm smile. "Welcome to the hotel. I hope your stay is everything you expected." The man in the hoodie extended a hand, not just in greeting, but in reassurance. The couple shook it, confused but grateful. The receptionist froze. Her fingers paused on the keyboard, her mouth slightly open. "Sir," she started, trying to catch up. "How do you—" He looked at her, finally, directly. And in that look, without a word, she knew. She had misjudged the wrong man. And now the consequences were coming. The man in the hoodie walked away from the front desk, leaving the couple in better spirits and the receptionist in stunned silence. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to explain who he was. Not yet. That moment would come. But first, there were steps to take. Measured, deliberate steps that would make sure this wasn't just a lesson, but a turning point. He reached the edge of the lobby, where the light dimmed near the side hallway. The scent of floor wax lingered in the air, and the faint hum of an ice machine filled the background. He pulled his phone from his pocket and unlocked it with a swipe. No hesitation, no uncertainty. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the name. David Langford, Regional Director. He tapped the screen. The phone rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, crisp and alert. "David Langford." "It's me," the man said, calm and even. There was a pause, just long enough to register recognition. "Sir, everything okay?" "No," he replied. "Not even close." David didn't interrupt. He knew better. "I'm at the downtown property," the man continued. "Walked in over an hour ago. Got ignored, dismissed, and told to wait out back. Twice." David exhaled, not out of surprise, but disappointment. "I assume they don't know who you are." "They don't, and that's the point." There was another pause, heavier this time. "What do you want me to do?" David asked, voice tightening. "Be here in 30, bring files. I want full staff records, role descriptions, and I want you to quietly observe who's working tonight. Watch how they move, how they treat people. We're going to handle this face to face." David responded without missing a beat. "On my way." The man ended the call without a goodbye. He didn't need one. David would know what to do. He always did. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. From across the lobby, the receptionist pretended not to watch him, but her eyes kept flicking in his direction. Something about his posture had changed. The quiet ease was still there, but now there was something sharper beneath it. A stillness that wasn't passive. It was waiting. Back near the elevators, the janitor pushed his mop slowly across the floor. He glanced up and offered another nod. The man nodded back. The building felt different now. The same lights, same walls, but the power had shifted. The man looked toward the revolving doors at the entrance, already picturing the moment David would step through them. When he did, everything would change. Not because he would shout, not because he would make a scene, but because when you've built something from the ground up, you don't let people tear it down with arrogance and ego. You fix it. And tonight, the fixing had begun. The man exhaled once, slowly, and looked at his watch. The countdown had started. The valet out front barely had time to react. 1 second, the curb was quiet. The next, a black executive sedan slid into view. Sleek, silent, and unmistakably high-end. The paint gleamed like polished obsidian under the city lights, the tinted windows offering no glimpse of the man inside. It didn't need to. The presence of the vehicle alone commanded attention. The engine purred to a stop. A beat of silence passed before the rear door opened with practiced smoothness. Out stepped David Langford, sharp navy suit, silver tie, crisp white shirt. He looked like he'd stepped straight off a boardroom stage. No hesitation, no confusion, just purpose. the kind that made people straighten their backs even if they didn't know why. He adjusted his cufflinks, took one glance at the hotel's front entrance, and walked through the doors without breaking stride. Inside, the lobby staff noticed immediately. The front desk receptionist stopped mid-sentence. The bellhop froze near the elevator. One of the sales managers seated with a tablet stood up instinctively. They didn't recognize David by name, but they recognized authority when it walked in like it owned the air. David didn't greet them, didn't look their way. He scanned the room once, then turned toward the side hallway, toward the man in the hoodie, still leaning against the marble wall. The contrast was striking, the suit and the hoodie, power-dressed 2 ways. David walked up and stopped just short of him. Then, quietly, respectfully, he nodded. "Sir." The receptionist's face twisted in confusion. Her lips parted as if to speak, but the words died before they could form. The man in the hoodie pushed off the wall, standing upright. He returned the nod with calm precision. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," David said. "I came straight from the quarterly briefing." "You bring what I asked for?" David held up a slim black leather folder. "Everything. Staff records, shift logs, complaints, even the camera footage from the past 24 hours. "Good." The man took a slow breath, scanning the lobby one more time. Not as a visitor now, but as something else. Something the staff was just beginning to realize. David followed his gaze, then leaned in slightly, his voice low. "They're starting to whisper. Won't be long before someone puts the pieces together." "I'm counting on it," the man said. From behind the front desk, the receptionist whispered to a co-worker, "Who is that guy?" Neither of them had an answer, not yet. But the pieces were falling into place, the expensive car, the suit that knew exactly where to go, the man they had told to wait outside now standing shoulder to shoulder with someone clearly important. The lobby no longer felt like theirs. The man turned to David one last time. "Let's take a walk." And with that, they headed into the heart of the hotel. 2 men walking with purpose through a building that had forgotten who it truly served. But not for much longer. The shift in the lobby was almost physical, like the air had thickened, conversations stopped mid-word, phones were put down, postures straightened. Every staff member behind the front desk suddenly looked like they'd forgotten how to breathe. From a distance, it was subtle, but up close, the panic was real. The receptionist, the same one who had dismissed him not an hour ago, watched as the man in the hoodie walked side by side with the sharply dressed stranger. She saw how they spoke to each other like equals. No pleasantries, no performance, just quiet, mutual authority. Her stomach dropped. 2 agents behind her whispered quickly, trying to keep their voices down. "Who is that guy?" "I don't know," the other one said, but he didn't come in with the suit. He's been here all night." "He was the one standing over there by the pillar, right? The one we told—" "Yeah," the first one cut in, eyes wide. "That's him." The realizations swept through the staff like a cold wave. One by one, they connected the dots. He hadn't just been waiting for a friend. He hadn't just been another walk-in. He had been watching. The bellhop who had ignored him earlier now hovered awkwardly near the concierge stand, hands clasped too tightly behind his back. His eyes kept darting toward the elevator corridor, where the man and his suited companion had disappeared. The concierge looked like he was trying to shrink inside his perfectly fitted vest. He muttered to himself, glancing toward the security guard stationed near the front. "I think we screwed up," he said. The guard didn't respond. He just watched the hallway with a clenched jaw, like a man waiting for a verdict. Behind the front desk, the receptionist's hand hovered over her keyboard, shaking slightly. She tried to focus on the task in front of her, but her mind was racing. Did he hear what she said earlier? Did he see how they treated that couple? Did he notice the smirk? Of course he did. And worse, he remembered. She turned to the others, voice hushed but urgent. "What do we do?" No one answered. because deep down they all knew the truth. It was too late. Too late to fix it, too late to pretend, too late to offer smiles and apologies and last-minute hospitality. The damage had already been done, not just by their actions, but by the comfort they'd had while doing them. They had assumed he was no one. Now they were realizing he might be someone. Someone important, someone powerful, someone who had just brought a regional director into the building without his scheduled meeting, without warning, and without telling anyone why. The receptionist's mouth was dry. She looked down at her screen, the lines of guest information blurring. She had misjudged him. They all had. And now, the man they had ignored was about to become the only one that mattered. The man didn't change clothes, didn't flash a badge, didn't announce who he was. He didn't need to. Now, as he walked the corridors of his own hotel with David beside him, the weight of who he truly was moved through the building like an invisible current. The same employees who had brushed past him earlier now found reasons to linger near walls or duck into side rooms, eyes cautiously tracking his every step. The calm in his expression hadn't changed, but the way people reacted to it had. Where before there was indifference, now there was fear. Where there had been dismissal, now came forced smiles, fake enthusiasm, too late attempts at courtesy. It disgusted him. They hadn't improved because they'd learned something. They'd improved because they were caught. He moved slowly, deliberately, eyes tracing every detail. Not the kind you find on checklists, but the real signs. A server in the lounge rolling her eyes behind a guest's back. A valet handing keys without making eye contact. A housekeeping cart left in disarray near the elevator, half open and exposed. Maintenance log says that light above room 417 has been out for 3 days, David said quietly. 3 days? The man asked, not looking up. David nodded. Reported, never resolved, marked, non-urgent. The man's jaw tightened, not because of the bulb, but because of what it represented. He rounded a corner near the spa wing and passed 2 employees talking in hushed tones. They stiffened when they saw him. One gave a nervous smile. "Good evening, sir," she offered, voice too bright, too sudden. He paused, looked her in the eye. "Do I know you?" Her smile faltered. I don't think so." He held her gaze for a second longer, then nodded and kept walking. They reached the conference hallway, where a small team had just finished a private dinner service for a high-end event. Linen napkins folded with military precision, candlelight flickering in low crystal holders. It all looked perfect, until one of the servers snapped at a kitchen runner behind the scenes, her voice sharp, ugly, meant to cut. She didn't realize he was standing just beyond the curtain. He did. It was all surface, all show. This wasn't hospitality, it was performance, and worst of all, it was unchecked. "This is what it looks like when fear replaces pride," the man said quietly to David. "They're not proud to work here. They're just scared to lose the illusion." David nodded, the leather folder still tucked under his arm. "It's systemic. You can see it everywhere, and it starts at the top." The man stopped in front of a wide glass window overlooking the garden terrace. The moonlight spilled across the patio in long silver streaks. Beneath it, the place looked peaceful, elegant. But behind that glass, the cracks were obvious. He turned to David. "It's time." "Time for what?" The man's voice was steady. "For them to meet the real guest they've been ignoring all along." The janitor was finishing up near the back hallway when David found him. He stood by the mop sink, wringing out a cloth with the same care he'd used to polish brass railings an hour earlier. His posture was calm, shoulders relaxed, movements slow and steady. He didn't notice David at first. He was too focused on doing his job right. "Excuse me," David said gently. The janitor turned, a little startled. "Can I help you?" "Someone would like to speak with you, privately." The janitor raised an eyebrow. Me? David nodded. It's not a bad thing. He hesitated, then set the cloth aside, wiped his hands on his faded pants and followed. They brought him to the conference lounge, a quiet, glass-walled room overlooking the city. It was empty, dimly lit, with just 2 chairs near the window. The man in the hoodie was waiting. Except now the janitor looked at him differently. Not because he had changed anything, but because everyone else had. The man stood and extended a hand. "I never got your name," he said. The janitor shook it without hesitation. "Isaiah." "Isaiah," the man repeated, like he was committing it to memory. "I want to thank you. Earlier tonight, you were the only person here who treated me like a human being." Isaiah shrugged. "Didn't seem like you needed to be treated like anything else." "And yet," the man said, "most others didn't get the memo." They sat, no fanfare, no formality, just 2 people who had seen too much of how things really work. "You've been here a long time," the man said. 12 years, Isaiah replied. "Seen a lot of faces come and go, some good, some not so much." "And lately?" Isaiah looked out the window, eyes reflecting the city lights. "Lately it's felt like we're not in the business of service anymore, just in the business of selling the idea of service." The man didn't speak. He didn't have to. Isaiah continued. "Used to be, people cared, managers walked the floor, knew your name. Now, it's like everyone's just waiting for someone richer to walk in so they can pretend to care again." He turned, meeting the man's eyes. "But pretending ain't service, and it sure as hell ain't leadership." The man leaned back, hands folded in his lap. "You ever think about running a place like this?" Isaiah blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you," Isaiah chuckled. "I clean bathrooms, sir." "You lead by example," the man said, his voice low and clear. "You didn't know who I was. Didn't need to. You treated me with respect, because that's who you are, not because of who I am." Isaiah sat in silence for a moment, the weight of those words settling around him. "You think that's leadership?" he asked. The man nodded. "It's the only kind that matters." Outside the glass wall, the hotel glittered like something perfect. Inside, the truth sat in a quiet room with a mop bucket, a folded towel, and a man who understood what real service looked like. The call came through the front desk line, calm, professional, and impossible to ignore. "The general manager is needed in the conference lounge immediately." The receptionist went pale. She didn't ask why. She already knew. 2 minutes later, the manager walked through the door with his usual swagger, still wearing the same crisp charcoal suit, still carrying himself like the king of the castle. But the moment he stepped into the lounge and saw who was waiting, that confidence cracked just slightly. The man in the hoodie sat across from David Langford, regional director, and the janitor, Isaiah, who now looked more composed than ever. No uniforms, no podiums, just chairs and silence. "Good evening," the manager said, clearing his throat. "Is something wrong?" The man looked up slowly. "You tell me." The manager glanced nervously at David, who offered nothing in return, no smile, no nod, just a blank stare. "I'm not sure I understand," the manager said, trying to keep his tone level. The man gestured to the seat across from them. "Please, sit." The manager obeyed, his movements slightly more careful than before. He smoothed his jacket, crossed one leg, tried to maintain the air of someone in control. The man didn't speak right away. He let the moment stretch until the silence became a wait. "I walked into this hotel earlier today," he said finally, voice even. "No one greeted me. No one asked if I needed help. I was told to wait in the back, twice." The manager shifted. "I understand. I can assure you our staff—" "Do you know who I am?" the man interrupted. The question landed like a stone. The manager opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. No, sir. My name is Marcus Devereaux, CEO and majority owner of this property. I've been standing in your lobby for over an hour. Invisible, by design. Color drained from the manager's face. Isaiah watched quietly from his chair. David sat perfectly still. And while I was there, Marcus continued, I watched how your staff treated people who didn't look the part. Not just me, a couple at the front desk, my own employees. You gave a tour to a potential investor while your frontline team laughed at guests behind their backs. The manager fumbled for his defense. Sir, if I may, there must have been a misunderstanding. I wasn't aware. There was no misunderstanding, Marcus cut in, his voice still controlled. There was a culture, one you allowed to grow under your leadership, a culture of exclusion, of arrogance, of performance without integrity. The manager leaned forward, desperation creeping into his tone. Mr. Devereaux, please, I've done everything I can to uphold the hotel's standards. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Standards? You mean the ones that tell your staff who's worthy of respect and who isn't? The ones that treat janitors like background noise and guests like burdens? If they don't flash platinum cards. The room went quiet again. Marcus exhaled, slow and deliberate. You don't run this hotel anymore, he said flatly. And just like that, the manager's reign ended, not with a scene, but with a sentence. Isaiah sat still as the weight of the moment pressed in around him. He hadn't said much during the meeting. He hadn't needed to. The truth had spoken for itself. The look on the manager's face when Marcus delivered those final words had said it all. Now, the former manager was gone. Quietly escorted out by HR, his tailored suit and expensive watch doing nothing to protect him from accountability. The door hadn't slammed. It didn't need to. The silence he left behind was louder than any exit. David closed the folder in front of him and set it aside. Marcus remained seated, fingers loosely clasped in front of him, eyes focused on Isaiah now, not with scrutiny, but with something deeper. You said earlier, Marcus began, that you just clean bathrooms. Isaiah gave a small smile. Well, that's part of it. Marcus nodded slowly. You ever consider doing more? Isaiah blinked. Sir? You've worked here 12 years, showed more grace, empathy and judgment in one night than most people do in their careers. And not because someone was watching, but because it's who you are. Isaiah shifted in his seat. I just try to do right, even when it's not easy, Marcus smiled. Exactly. He leaned back slightly, his voice calm but resolute. Starting Monday, I'd like you to come in early, not for cleaning, for orientation. You'll be shadowing David for 2 weeks. After that, you'll take over as our new Assistant Guest Services Director. Isaiah stared at him, mouth slightly open. Me? Marcus nodded. You. David offered a smile, small and sincere. It's not a ceremonial title, it's real and earned. Isaiah shook his head slowly, disbelief washing over him. I don't have a degree, I've never led a team, I don't know anything about... You know everything that matters, Marcus said, interrupting gently. You treat people with dignity. You do the hard work without complaining. You step up when others shrink. That's leadership. The room fell quiet again. Not out of tension this time, but respect. Isaiah's eyes dropped to the floor, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Marcus stood and extended his hand. Then don't. Just keep doing what you've been doing. Isaiah rose slowly and shook his hand, calloused fingers meeting a firm grip. The handshake wasn't symbolic, it was binding. Thank you, Isaiah said, voice thick. You earned it, Marcus replied. All I did was notice. As the room emptied, Marcus turned back once more, addressing the staff who had gathered silently at a distance, unsure of what came next. He spoke not with anger, but clarity. Let this be the new standard. Status means nothing here. Kindness is the currency. And respect, real respect, isn't a luxury for the elite. It's the bare minimum for everyone. No applause followed, just reflection, because in that moment, a janitor became a leader. And a hotel finally remembered what hospitality was supposed to be. Morning sunlight spilled through the lobby's tall windows, casting long golden lines across the marble floor. The city outside had already begun its rhythm. Horns, footsteps, distant coffee orders shouted into sidewalk air. But inside the hotel, something felt different. Not louder, not chaotic, just still. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting to see what would come next. The front desk was quiet when Marcus entered. No security escort, no announcements, just the same hoodie, the same steady walk. But now, no one dared look away. The receptionist, who had once told him to wait out back, stood behind the counter, posture stiff, eyes unsure. She had seen the fallout, watched the manager vanish from his office, heard the whispers of titles changing hands. Now, she met Marcus's gaze, hesitant, searching. He offered no scolding, no lecture, only a folded piece of paper in his hand. He placed it gently on the counter. Post this where everyone can see it. She reached for it slowly, unfolding the thick cardstock with shaking fingers. It was handwritten, simple black ink on white paper. No logos, no signatures, just a sentence. Every guest matters, every person matters. She looked up. Her mouth parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, but Marcus was already walking away. By the time he reached the elevator, the message had begun its quiet ripple. Housekeeping saw it first, then bellhops, then concierge staff. No one spoke when they read it. They didn't need to. The weight of it landed gently but firmly in their chests, like the feeling of a hand placed on your shoulder. Steadying? Reminding? In the staff lounge, Isaiah sat at a small desk reviewing his new training materials. His uniform was gone, replaced by a navy blue blazer and an ID badge that still felt strange on his chest. But he wore it like he wore everything, with quiet pride. He looked up when Marcus walked in. "How's the new office?" Marcus asked. Isaiah chuckled. "Still figuring out which drawer the pens go in." "You'll figure it out." Marcus handed him a second copy of the note. "One for your desk." Isaiah took it slowly, reading the words with a deeper weight than anyone else could have felt. He didn't just understand the message. He was the message. "Think they'll believe it?" he asked softly. "They'll feel it," Marcus replied, "but only if we live it." Back in the lobby, guests began to arrive, some in suits, some in backpacks, some in nothing but travel wear and exhaustion, and this time, every single one of them was greeted the same way, with eye contact, a genuine smile, and a simple question: "How can we make your stay better?" No champagne, no forced charm, just care. The note remained at the front desk, unmoved, unframed, a quiet promise in plain sight. And as the day unfolded under new leadership, one thing became clear. This was no longer a hotel that catered to appearances. It was a place where respect checked in first and stayed. Respect isn't earned by title or bought with wealth. It's revealed in how we treat people when no one's watching. Marcus didn't change the hotel with speeches or policy memos. He changed it by reminding everyone of something simple. The smallest act of dignity can define the soul of a place. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt overlooked, or if you've been the Isaiah in someone else's day, drop a comment below and share your experience. And if you believe the world needs more leaders who lead with kindness, not ego, hit that subscribe button, because stories like this, we're just getting started.